Alright, welcome back. So in the last one we did our switch, we wired our relay and installed the fusible link in line. One thing I should mention is I made a mistake with this one. I was not meaning to use the white here, I was actually going to use the red, but I put that on. It doesn't make any difference because it's going to the red, the power source for the load, the LED bar lights, pod lights. But if I was to be installing this properly, I would use the red wire coming off this, just so I, at any later date, knew that's a hot wire. Most times with stereos and stuff, your blue wire is some sort of a trigger wire. So I tend to try and keep those, use the odd colors, whites and yellows and greens or whatever for those, and use red specifically for power wires. That way if I look at my project later on and I see a multitude of wires, I can almost guarantee that that red wire is 12 volt. So that said, I'm just going to continue on so I'm not wasting the wire here. Now, end up taking that. For this one, I'm going to use a waterproof connector. These things are great. I would highly recommend using these with any of your LED lights, especially out near them, for your connection outside. Not only because they're waterproof, I mean you could hardwire them right in and solder and heat-shrink and make sure they're nice and solid there. I use these because if there is a problem later on and one of those lights burned out, I don't have to cut and redo everything. I can unclip it, put a new connector in on the new light, click it back in, I'm done. So I go that route with these. You don't have to, but that's my way of doing things. So I would twist this on. Got to put on the heat shrink first. That was a test. So first things first, we're going to slam our heat shrink down over top of this 12 volt wire, which is the switch wire. Not the switch, sorry, it's the out from the relay, which technically is switched, is what I was alluding to, but it's only powered when it comes through the switch, so out of the relay. There we go. Dab, and we're done. Also, if you haven't seen these things, excuse me, if you haven't seen these things, these are great. You can get them at most electrical supply stores, off the internet, wherever. It is a solder sucking pen. So if you're doing work and you end up getting too much solder on there, all you have to do is depress the plunger and it creates a vacuum on the inside, and when you press the button, it sucks it up, and then you just press the button and spit it out, solder out. Awesome, especially if you're working on breadboards or stuff like that, where you might have very small tolerances to be working with, and if you do apply too much solder, you can make a connection you don't want connected. So I recommend getting one of those if you don't already have them. They're cheap like Borscht. I think they're only like 10 bucks, something like that, if that, 5-10 bucks. Handy. Alright, so that one's done. And now we would connect that one onto our ground wire. So we could connect it to the 85. Again, it's heat shrink. For ease of use here, make my life a little easier, I'm going to put a small jumper in between those. The rest of the wires coming off those pigtails and whatnot are longer, and I think I should stick with that, so I'm going to do this. I did not put the heat shrink on there at first because it's an open wire still and I can add it after. I know I sound like a broken record with that, but it's because that's what's playing in my head every time I do this stuff, is remember to put the heat shrink on, remember to do this, remember to do that. So when I'm actually out there doing it, I don't forget. It doesn't become something I have to remember, it becomes something that's second nature. Depends on how much you're wiring, I guess. Alright, so we got these. Again, we will strip the end and I will connect it to this one. This application, I'm going to do it a bit different. I'm going to leave it a little longer on the one side and use my blunt nose cutters, trim that off. So there's another way you can do it. Blunt nose, bull nose, whatever you want to call them, they're very handy. And look at that. And just as I said that about the remembering to always do that with the wire, I forget. Thank you, Murphy's Law. Alright, so got our connection, and here we go. So there's always a lot of different ways to do something like this, and my way, well, I believe it to be the right way. It is open to interpretation, a little bit of interpretation, not a lot of interpretation. There's one thing you are always hearing if you're doing any sort of electrical work is I am, or my buddy is, an electrician, and if that's the case, then I'm seriously worried about 99% of the houses that are in any city, because I've seen a lot of scary stuff from people who are an electrician. Alright, so we've got those ones done, and we've got our ground wire from the switch. We have our ground wires to go to this one. So while I'm thinking about it, I am going to add the heat shrink right now. A lot of times when I'm tripping around and buying stuff, I have bought heat shrink of different colors. It's very popular on eBay and whatnot. Usually not in the bulk sizes, but they are handy to have a box around. If you pick one up, you can use it to do your color coding. So if you get some red, you can use that on your red wires at the end of the red wires or whatnot, and that will be an added reminder as to that is a hot wire, a 12-volt live wire, as opposed to having just the plain black on the end of everything. Not something you would do all the time, but it does have some purposes and some applications, and it's there, so it's worth having a little bit around. I think it was relatively inexpensive, and if you're not using it all the time, that's worth having. Okay. Now, I will have to make one more adjustment here for a mistake I made just a few minutes ago. Didn't turn out exactly as I wanted, but it will work. Okay, and again, that is too hot to run the heat shrink over, so you cool it down with the pliers and try and slide it over as fast as possible. Alright, so there we have our connections going to the lights. In this case I did red to red, connected the two red powers in to the LEDs, the two black ground into the LEDs together, and then I ran the single wire off of those to simulate how it would be outside in a truck or whatnot. Now we are almost ready for this. Alright, so I actually made a mistake in the ground wire, and I knew it at the time, but wanted to continue, keep things flowing. Didn't leave space for one to go out, one wire out. So now we've got to fix that. I've got the heat on the connection. I've taken the heat shrink off. Put my finger on that side and use that to pull it out. Once you got them loosened off, you're going to go and fix that, because I like it to hopefully be fairly neat. And you might as well start with fresh wires rather than try to twist something that's already been tinned. Because once you tin them, they don't work so well. So don't strip so well. Alright, so take our heat shrink, slide it on them. We will take our wire, and if you notice, you take these two wires together and you lay them side by side. You can see that they're just kind of laid side by side there, and give them like a small twist together so that they're together, tightened up. Now you take your other side wire and you put it over top like we have in all the other ones, and you twist it together like that, just like all the other ones. That last step is exactly the same. The only difference is that the first one we used, the first two wires were twisted together, and I will explain why in just a second. There is method to my madness. It is not random. You probably already know, but in case you didn't, when you're trying to slide the heat shrink down, if you try to connect them all together and have them willy-nilly, it's not going to slide over top, because it has to go over only one way. So in twisting those two wires together in the first place, and then bringing the third wire in straight, you actually make it so when you put your heat shrink over top, it slides right over top, and you get a very nice seat there for the heat shrink. You're not having one wire sticking out too far. The only other thing I would suggest with that is making sure that you don't use too small of a piece of heat shrink, diameter wise, not length, but the diameter, because it has to go over more than one wire. You're going over two, including the smaller one and the one that's by itself. So your inside diameter of that heat shrink is going to be, needs to be larger to fit over those. So we'll double check what we've got going on here. Excuse me. We have our power source, and we have our ground. So now these two grounds can be twisted together, and these two power sources, the power source to the switch and to the relay, can be twisted together. The only reason I'm twisting them together, this wouldn't be how you do it in the car, but because I only have the one power source here, and I need to power everything through that. So, if I've done this correctly, we should get light as soon as I do that switch. Pointing those out that way so they're not going to blind everybody in the camera. There you go. Your LED switch is lit up. You have your lights working, LED bar or pod lights. The relay clicked. If I wanted to, I could easily pull this off. Well, not easily, but I could pull it off, and now the lights are separate. The switch and stuff is all separate. Relay, so everything is components, and you can take these off and fix them if you needed to, and then once you replace them or whatnot, back in you go, you're golden. So that is your general setup for a toggle switch, fusible link, a 12 volt 40 amp JD 1914 relay, automotive relay. They're in everything. Look under your hood. you see these, it'll most likely have that JD 1914 in it. They're everywhere. They're in the pre-made kits that you pay an arm and a leg for your lighting and whatnot with the toggle switches and that. They're in your ATVs, they're in Caterpillars, they're all over the damn place. This whole setup, with excluding the lights, probably cost maybe $10, including the extra hookup wire and whatnot, and the connectors and stuff I don't count because I had those around. But you can put one of these setups together really inexpensive. Get yourself some of that corrugated tubing that they use for running wires in cars and whatnot. You can buy it by the roll. I do, and it's got a slit down it. It's like flexible line that we use in hydroponic systems and bilge pumps and boats and whatnot. But the electrical stuff comes with a slit down it, so you just slide your wires in there, you run them where you want them to go, and they're secure and hidden and safe. Hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you found it informative. If you did, please like and subscribe to my channel. And if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, feel free to leave them in the description below. Thanks again, and have a great day.